How's it going, Kittanning? Welcome back to the Greatest City in the World podcast. You may or may not remember Joanne. We are trying something new today.
Yes.
Very excited about it. We're calling it Mental Health Mondays, so you're hopefully seeing this on Monday morning. It'll be live every Monday morning at 6:15, whenever it's going to happen. And so we're going to kind of go through a couple different things. My goal for this whole kind of segment or series, if you will, is to tackle the part of Kittanning 300, which is about opioids and addiction. Okay. And when we talk a lot about that, I always am just led back to the mental health aspect of what leads us to that. Because I think the opioid addiction is kind of the fruit, but it's not the root.
No, not in the least.
And so we need to kind of dig into that a little bit. You are my resident expert on all things mental health. And so what we're hoping is that we'll be able to talk about individual situations and how individuals deal with trauma and different experiences of anxiety and depression. And then we'll be able to take that information and apply it to us as a city as a whole.
Yes.
And I guess not even just a city, but a region and a nation and all the different problems that we deal with as a society. Right. So you guys might remember Joanne from last year. I think you were
Was it last year?
Yeah,
I was one of the early ones.
Yeah, you were like the third episode number 3, I believe.
Very cool.
And so if you guys want to learn more about Joanne and her past, I'm sure that we'll get into that a little bit as we go through this series again. But if you want to learn a lot more about her, we have an hour-long podcast that's actually episode 3 on this podcast, so you can go check that out.
Okay. You know, I should mention that I rewatched it because I have some people who have come to me to work with me from watching that podcast.
Yeah.
And I thought I better know what was in it, right? What brought them.
Right.
And so one of the pieces in there, I make it sound as though alcohol and weed was the only hard drug that I referenced, but that's not the case in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So I have real experience with the harder substances that are highly, highly addictive and highly, highly difficult to remove from your life.
Right.
So I just wanted to clarify that component because it sounded like I thought weed was this huge hard drug.
Right.
And it's not good, but it's also doesn't have the kind of hold on a person that those harder substances do.
Sure. And I was, I've been down that road as well as far as alcoholism, substance abuse, all that kind of stuff. And so we have similar stories in a lot of ways, and then we have a lot of differences as well. But God has been in all of it for sure for both of us.
Big time.
And so what triggered this whole thing was we have these conversations normally just amongst the two of us. And one day I said, we should really be recording this because there's so much good information that we should be having these conversations for a public venue so that other people can take the awesome things that have been gleaned for me, and you all can apply it to your lives as well.
It makes it come alive for me as well. I have a deeper and deeper understanding of the validity of all of this information when I'm bouncing it off you, when you're bouncing it off me, when I'm working with other people. And then I'd really like for viewers, especially starting off Monday morning to get you through the week, to be able to say, oh, okay, I'm getting a sense, I'm being able to make sense out of my experience. Because when you can make sense out of your experience, then you can determine a direction and move toward it. If you can't make sense out of it, it's chaos.
Yep. And that's, I think, our other purpose for this is that you would leave comments and you would leave questions about situations that you're going through, or maybe you have a family member that's dealing with something and you're wondering, hey, what's going on in their life, or how can I approach this differently because what I'm doing is not working.
Please.
And we can take those situations and talk through them on this Monday morning podcast, and hopefully we'll be able to, as a community, come together and figure out how to get some real victory.
Right. Totally doable.
Yeah. So that's where we've been at, and the conversation we had a couple weeks ago is where I want to go today with it, because we don't have any viewer questions, so we'll just use mine.
All right.
Where I was at is I feel like in Kittanning we've been seeing slowly the victories happen. We've seen the Market Street project happen. We've seen the first fruits of the Blight Task Force tore down this house. And, that was a really big victory for me. We've seen little businesses pop up here and there. Talk about over the past few years, Two Short Gals, Yamato. These have been long-term successes. Amano on Water Street, now the Meredith Inn, which by all accounts seems to be a huge success, at least in its grand opening. And so we're seeing these like first fruits of victory. And yet, through all of that, we seem to have this mindset as a city that we're still stuck. We're still the same old Kittanning. We're not making any progress at all. And I just wonder, that I think we see happen on an individual standpoint as well. And maybe you could speak a little bit more to that aspect of when someone is maybe in recovery and they start to experience a little bit of victory. They start to have a little bit of victory, but they're not experiencing it. And so can you just speak to that a little bit and like just maybe a practical real life story of things that you've seen happen in people's lives?
All right. Well, let's start with people in recovery, right?
Yeah.
If they're in recovery, that means that they were needing to use substances in order to self-medicate to begin with. Because it's never, I think I'll go become an addict today, right? It's always a beginning of doing something that will make the person not feel whatever it is they are feeling. That is unacceptable to the body, to the mind, and to the emotion. All right. So when we look at that, whatever has happened that has made the person need to go to some other substance is something, and I shouldn't say is something, because most often it's a series of things. It's a continuum of things. And it's been experiences and a life that sets the person up in a way to expect that this is what the rest of their life will be.
Right.
And so when a person is positioned in that way, then whatever smacks of hope, whatever looks like something could potentially be better, different, in and of itself becomes threatening. And it becomes threatening because there's been a whole series of events that have said, you have hope? Let me smack you down, right? And because that's been what has conditioned, what has shaped the person, then the expectation is that no matter how good it appears or it looks, I can count on it's always going to go to, I can't say it.
Like everything's going to go bad.
Right, go bad.
No matter no matter what good is happening around me, it's always going to come back to this same place that I was before.
Right.
And so it's safer for me to stay in the thing that I don't like.
Correct.
It's safer for me to be there than it is for me to hope for some kind of better future.
Right.
And I just think it's really interesting. I don't know how, maybe we can get into the brain a little bit too, and kind of the mental ruts, because I think that was a really powerful thing for me in our conversation as well. Because I think, something might happen. I'm just going to give an example and maybe you can speak to it. Something happens in your childhood, a traumatic event.
And not necessarily childhood.
Well, whenever.
Whenever.
So something happens that's very traumatic, and it when that happens, it actually forms a electrical circuit way in your brain. And that becomes, the more that it happens, the more that you are in that traumatic experience, the stronger that connection gets.
Right. And yes, the more that it happens, but also it doesn't have to be the more that it happens. It can simply be when you're walking around out there, because you've had a traumatic experience, anything that looks like, smells like, feels like, whatever the five senses can pick up, if it's similar to the thing that caused the trauma to begin with, then that electrical synapses connection is automatic. And so it literally creates a rut in the mindscape in a way that from signal to conclusion, it just automatically goes there. And the automatically goes there is that place where the emotions of the trauma cannot be processed. And since they can't be processed, they become constricted. And in that constriction and in that suppression, there is depression. But they want to be known, and they're trying to tell us something that needs to be healed. And that is the anxiety component.
Right.
It's being stirred up and it's saying, hey, we need attention. But the part of the brain that says we can't handle that, we're not going there, just keeps pushing it down.
Right.
And then
so it can be a single event.
It can be.
But then every time that it's relived through through daily life,
Right.
it's still strengthening that connection in your brain until
Correct.
it's rooted out and dealt with in a healthy way.
Right. Although I should mention, the traumatic event can be not traumatic for someone else.
Right.
All right. So previous to that traumatic event, there is a series of things that have enacted the fight or flight response to come up, come up, come up. And then when something traumatic occurs, the fight or flight reaction stays on. Okay, and it views everything through that lens.
Yeah.
All right, because two people may experience the very same thing, but if the component of our brain that can prioritize, can process information, can evaluate, and use it for long-term goal planning is in charge, then that event is something that can be processed through because the emotion can be released.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times that's where we can become very not empathetic toward other people because we can see something that they're going through and we're kind of experiencing it for them and we're saying, well, I could deal with that. That they just need to like suck it up, you know, pull themselves up by the bootstraps and walk forward. And what we don't see is all of the previous trauma that is kind of stirred up when they experience what they're experiencing.
Correct.
And so we have to realize we're dealing with people.
Yes.
We're dealing with people that were created and loved by God, that were created for a purpose. There's nobody that we should look at and just look down upon.
Right.
We have to look at them not as some, you know, drug-crazed addict. We have to look at them as a human being who obviously has been dealing with something that has brought them to the place they are today.
Right. A human being in pain, right?
Yeah.
And Scripture says, do not be conformed by this world. Conformed means shaped by. We all, I mean, I don't know if everyone, I can't speak for everyone, but I have commonly understood that Scripture to mean don't go do the things of the world.
Right.
Okay. But conformed, when we really look at the word and what it means shaped by.
Right.
And we were created to be people who are able to connect to God and use His power and knowledge and information in dealing with what's going on in this world.
Right.
However, because there are so many horrific things that happen in this world now, it ends up setting people up for the expectation that that's how their lives are always going to be. So to me, that's what is conforming the people to this world.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's Romans chapter 12, verse 2. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind.
Bam!
And so it's like, it's just so powerful, isn't it? Because we're a product of our culture. Every single one of us.
Right.
We all think that, well, some of us, like myself, we might think that we're the greatest thing since sliced bread. But the fact is that there are a lot of things that we automatically respond to because I grew up in rural Minnesota or because I grew up in the United States or because whatever.
Right.
We're a product of our culture because, and that's why God had to specifically tell us, don't let the world shape you.
Right.
I want to shape you.
Right.
You need to continually be transformed by the renewing of your mind, by the washing in the Word. And so, it's a powerful insight. Yeah,
it
absolutely.
Really is.
So, so then, take me back to, let's go back now. We kind of just laid some groundwork there. Being able to celebrate, because once somebody, they get in recovery, some good things start to happen in their life. Maybe they get a job, or maybe they, their housing situation is finally stable. We can look at it from an outside perspective and say, wow, John is really doing good.
Right.
Like he seems to really be getting his life together.
Yeah.
What's John thinking and experiencing?
John is thinking and experiencing this could go at any moment.
Yeah.
This could go at any moment. And being afraid that it will.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and in being afraid that it will, what ends up happening is John slogging through, one foot in front of the other, and we're going, woohoo, and he's going, oh man, this is hard.
Yeah.
Right? All right, and because he can't experiencing meaning letting the emotion, energy and motion move through of what it means to have joy.
Right.
What it means to experience that hope, that love, that payoff, if you will.
Yeah.
All right? Yeah.
Because it's like when I walk through town, I'm seeing every little thing that changes. I'm like, yes, it's happening. It's happening all around us. And then, but I think I feel like that about my own life.
Right.
But for someone caught in addiction that still hasn't figured out how to, I don't know if I'm using the right terminology, but figure out how to celebrate the win or to experience the win, to feel the feeling of victory.
Right, without it being something that is threatening. Because I'm not saying that people don't go, hoo-hoo, all right. But they go, hoo-hoo, all right, and then they go, ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're like waiting for the other shoe to drop, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so that is a huge problem and reason why people just give up. So what would be the point?
Yeah. So take me back now again, the experience of that victory. We can feel that. So I'm picturing, maybe someone, and I know I'm taking it back to childhood, but it doesn't have to be childhood.
Right.
But say you're a child that's in trauma, you're always moving from place to place, there's never any stability, and it's every time you get a little stability, it's like everything gets thrown into chaos again. So now I'm an adult, I'm working through addiction, and I'm starting to experience some stability. That positive feeling actually has something wired in my brain that says there's something negative right around the corner.
Correct.
And so how do you overcome that? Because we see it over and over again.
Right.
Someone's doing well and then relapse, and then they do well again and then relapse.
Right.
And so how do we break that cycle on an individual level?
Well, the first component is knowing how to take your body out of fight and flight. There have been other terms attached to fight, flight as we study this more and we understand more. Those other terms are freeze and fawn.
Right.
Okay, so, and freeze is just not doing anything. That's been out there a little longer than fawn.
Yeah.
Fawn is all the codependency we see, trying to placate people, trying to say, they're there, it's okay, I'll make it better, I'll take care of it. Okay? So fawn is the newest one on
That's
the
really
scene.
interesting. I mean, now that you said it, I know a lot of situations like that where to deal with what I'm going through, I'm going to attach to another person and that will make me feel better.
Yes.
Taking care of this over here will make me forget about this over here.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Correct.
All right.
All right.
Super interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
It's the first I've ever heard that.
Yeah. So that is a function of what happens physiologically in our body when we are met with anything that makes us afraid. Okay? And I don't want to go into all of that right now, all of the how to do it.
Yeah.
Because I'd really like to get a general overview of how the things all go together today.
Maybe that's what we'll,
Okay, all right, so.
But we'll go deeper in that another time, for sure.
We'll go. But that has to be the first component. And the reason it has to be the first component is because if we are under fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, then the part of our brain that looks at everything as incoming and doesn't prioritize any of that information and doesn't evaluate it for where it should be on the continuum of attention and doesn't use that information in a way that allows the person to move in the direction they want to go. All it is overwhelming incoming.
Yeah.
Okay? And so that's the function of the part of the mind where when you were speaking earlier, that trauma automatically goes.
Right.
Okay. And so it essentially says, shut it down, shut it down, shut it down. Shut it down, meaning the situation. So whatever you can do to make yourself feel better and remove yourself from that fear, and also any associated emotion. Because the part of the mind that processes emotion is not available.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just however can I escape this situation?
Right.
How can I get away from it?
How can I get away from it? And a huge component of that is shutting down the emotion, right?
Yeah.
Which is why when you start to experience victory, not you, but people start experiencing victory, they can't feel that emotion because it is reminiscent of when they started to hope before.
Right.
All right.
Well, and I do feel it as well, so I don't want to exclude myself.
Okay.
I'm almost the opposite, where when I experience victory, I always feel like I need more. Like this isn't good enough.
Okay.
Like I haven't been victorious enough, so I need to like go to another level, which is still a problem.
It is.
But it's the opposite. The opposite end of the spectrum.
It is.
But
yes
that's
and no. It's kind of full, and that's the thing about all this. All of this is full circle.
Right. And that's probably from trauma from my childhood when I was always thinking, well, when I scored a 95, I should have got 100.
Yes.
And when I got 98, I should have had a 99. And I missed that one question, and it wasn't quite good enough. I'll do better next time.
Yeah.
And so that's where I grew up. And so I'm being thrown right back into my trauma, so to speak, even though it wasn't. I don't know.
Well, you can't measure pain.
Right.
All right. You cannot measure pain and impact. And I've had people say to me, which is really interesting, because as I'm trying to disseminate this information and have it really be something that people understand and use, I've had people say, this makes perfect sense if you've been there, if you know what it is and recognize what you're referring to.
Yeah.
If you don't know, it sounds like a whole bunch of gobbledygook, right? But that doesn't mean it's not relevant for everyone. And the reason it's relevant for everyone is because the World Health Organization is calling stress the #1 epidemic of the 21st century.
Right.
And that fight, flight, freeze, fawn, the 4 Fs. Can we call them the 4 Fs?
Sure.
Okay. So the 4 Fs is indeed a stress reaction.
Yeah.
Okay, so it all goes back to stress, anything that is threatening. And if we're experiencing that as an epidemic in the 21st century, we better know what to do with it in our bodies to mitigate it, not have to be running around externally finding things that make us feel better for a while so we can just go back and do it again.
Right.
We got to be able to do it in.
Well, I think you saying to mitigate it is very important as well, because the goal is not to just eliminate all those feelings.
No,
the goal
not
is
in the least.
The goal is to take all of the feelings and use them for what they're supposed to be used for, as indicators of what's going wrong, or what what do I need to correct?
Right.
How do I need to change my direction?
Right.
Instead of just using it as a, oh my goodness, I got to get out of here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Very much so.
So you were talking about the first thing that person has to be able to do is to be able to get into their functioning of. Go back to where you were going to talk.
Okay. Well, I'm
taking you off track, so I just want to bring us back because I think it's important.
Okay.
How does that person begin to experience victory or be able to celebrate the wins?
Right. Well, the body has to be in homeostasis.
Yeah.
All right. Meaning that everything's functioning in the way that it's supposed to function.
Yeah.
In order to do that, we have to be able to combat the physiological responses of the body when we're under stress.
Okay.
And that includes traumatic stress, post-traumatic stress. That includes, oh my God, burnout. Burnout is now being considered a diagnosis.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, right. So that's the continuum we're looking at.
Okay.
All right.
And we could talk more about how, but you have to be able to physiologically calm yourself.
Right, physiologically calm yourself. And that's homeostasis in the body.
Yeah.
Okay, how we were created to be.
And that's so our mind can then...
So the part of our mind that can... I keep using the same word, so I want to try to... The part of the mind that can deal, right?
Right.
The part of the mind that can say, I got this.
Yeah.
I know what to do here.
Yeah.
Right? Or if I don't in the moment, I know I'll get it figured out.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't throw them, but the part of the mind that is under the 4 F's when we're not in homeostasis is externally driven.
Well, I think the words that we talked about earlier, and maybe it would be helpful now,
Okay.
we talked about the difference between reacting and responding.
Yes.
And so
yes.
there's a part of our brain that is just when we, like, say somebody says something to us and it's offensive, there's part in our brain that will immediately react to it.
Correct.
And we can either choose to follow that reaction and escalate the situation and make things worse, or we can take in the information with a calm body, right?
Right.
And a mind in the right place.
Right.
Take the information, analyze it, and respond in a way that's going to be productive.
Right. Right.
And helpful.
And say, like, in order for me to be offended, your opinion has to matter. No.
Right.
No.
Yeah, that's true,
but
though.
No, but it
That's
is true. It is true. But, all right, to me, your opinion has to matter.
But I have
to
to
me. People's
to-
opinions matter. But
Yeah. But if I react to it, then I'm
Right.
giving it more power than
Correct.
it really deserves, right?
Correct. Oh, big time.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, right? And that's why I love that juxtaposition between react and respond, because let's go back to recovery,
Yeah.
right? If you can calm your body, when you calm your body, because we can all do it. We all have those automatic physiological responses, and we can all counter them.
Right.
All right? So when we do, we're able to respond. Able to respond means that we have responsibility. We now have a factor that creates response. We have that ability. Responsibility then means that we can handle our responsibilities. And in recovery, so often people say, as they move forward and as their lives become better, I can't handle all this responsibility. I'm overwhelmed. Right, because they don't have the ability to respond.
They have reactability.
Correct.
That's all they have. Yeah.
Correct. And it's all incoming.
And so literally this is interesting. We never talked about this. So when I tell someone to take responsibility, it takes on a whole different meaning then, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
It's like, no, calm yourself. You can grab a hold of this thing. You can do this.
Right.
You can move forward with a healthy response.
Yes.
And instead of an unhealthy
Right.
reaction.
Yes. So take responsibility. But they truly can't, right?
Until, yeah.
Right. I mean, they can slog through. But I think that's where the breakdown occurs when we say, oh, they don't want to do it. They don't want to help. They don't want. No.
And that's what I mean. It takes on a different meaning, because a lot of times we'll
Correct.
say that flippantly and be like, take responsibility. But now I can say, no, you can do this. Like,
Yes.
let me show you
Yes.
how you can take responsibility. It
Right.
brings a whole different empathy into the situation.
Correct.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love this stuff so
Yeah,
much.
good stuff.
I hope you're getting some value from this, because this is like lights my fire.
Yeah.
So, anything else you want to say on that specific piece? I know where I want to go, but
Yes, because
Okay.
I was thinking of a young lady who I work with. She's 16, and she was looking at my board. I have a board that outlines these two areas, and she's looking at my board, and she says, my whole family's on that side, meaning the 4F side.
Yeah.
She says, but now that I know that, it takes on a whole different meaning. She says, not that it still won't be difficult,
Right.
but she's no longer internalizing it as though it has to do with her.
right.
Okay? And she's learning what it means to shape her mindscape, to calm her body, shape her mindscape, and then direct her emotion.
Yeah.
Okay?
So good.
Yeah.
I didn't get permission from my wife to tell a story, so I won't. But
Okay.
maybe next time I'll
Okay.
do that, because I think that component right there, if we could just get that, it would change how we approach addiction as a whole community.
Yes. Yes.
It would change everything.
Yes.
So okay.
Okay.
Such good stuff. So back to the celebration thing, and maybe then we'll wrap up this week, and then we'll solicit for questions again, and
Yes.
see if we can keep this ball rolling.
Yeah.
So how do we take that from an individual perspective? How does a community calm itself so that a community can begin to get out of reaction mode, get into healthy response mode, and be able to experience the same joy, the same hope, the same victory, the same celebratory spirit that I feel every time I see a good thing happening around us.
All right.
How can we do that? I don't know if there's a legitimate answer to that question, and maybe there's not.
There is.
But I want to just hear from you. How can we take that from an individual level, which we know how that operates? How can we do that as a city?
Okay. Well, one, I know you asked me to go from individual to a city, but one, individuals need to learn this, okay?
Yeah.
That'd be one. But the beauty of it is, in the same way that our 4F reaction impacts our whole households or impacts our herd, if you will,
Yep.
when we calm our bodies and go into homeostasis, it impacts those around us as well, because it's called the herd response. All right. And so if a few key people really begin doing this, then others will start having the experience of having the parts of their minds online that allow for response and emotional processing to have victory. All right.
So just by me walking around and having that sense of victory,
Right.
it will rub off to an extent.
Well, you've got to be calibrating. Calibrating is countering the physiological responses.
In myself or in other people?
yourself.
Okay.
Well, in yourself, which triggers theirs.
Okay.
Just like we can set, well, you set me off, right?
Yeah.
You can feel that. You set me off. Well, you can also calm me.
Oh,
All
okay.
right. The number one way we help children under 10 years old experience that calm and restore safety is by holding them on their laps and calibrating.
Yeah.
On our laps.
Yeah.
Holding them on our laps.
Yeah.
And I was just recently speaking with a young lady who said, I have never seen her spouse, I've never seen my spouse show emotion
Yeah.
in the way that he has been. And she's been doing her own work with me, and this is what's occurring in her household.
Just because she's calibrating herself, she's experiencing her family then
Right.
reacting differently.
Not
responding
reacting
differently.
And don't forget, that's the part that comes online that can process that emotion. It doesn't have to be constricted. It's not threatening. It's not something where don't show emotion. It's moving. It's energy in motion.
Right.
All right.
Now, eventually, if we can do this, if we can begin to change our response, then we can actually begin to start formulating new pathways in the brain,
Correct.
right?
That's the whole point.
And then all of a sudden, our reactions don't automatically turn negative. Our reaction can actually then be a positive one, right?
It's no longer even a reaction. It's
Yeah.
a response.
Yeah.
All right. Now, we want reaction in true life or death situations. We don't want that guy to go away completely.
Right.
We just don't want him to be in charge of our day-to-day operations.
Yeah.
And right now, he's so in charge of so many people's day-to-day operations.
And I guess what I'm saying is like that automatic response
Right. Will become automatic.
becomes automatic.
It does. It becomes automatic.
Yeah.
And it puts us back to where we're supposed to be. So when we talk about individual to community, right, our whole community has experienced a lot of devastation.
Yes.
I hear so often when downtown was thriving, when different things were happening in a way that this was indeed a vibrant community.
Right.
Right? So then the devastating community trauma of the plants closing, of people leaving, of shops closing, of addiction coming in, of all of the social ills really becoming common because all that pain was happening and nobody knew what to do with it. That indeed is the very same thing that happens on the individual level.
Right.
So the same way that we heal individually, we heal as a community.
Yeah. One positive interaction at a time.
Well,
Formulate the new pathways.
yes, definitely, but it can happen at the community level as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so when people, and no doubt individuals, but it doesn't have to be all individuals for it to happen. I guess that's my point.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
We just kind of need that. We need enough people to be experiencing it that we'll see that tipping point then, so to speak,
Correct.
in the community where calming,
Mm-hmm.
responding
Mm-hmm.
side of us will take over.
Right. This is one of the angriest places I've ever seen, and I've lived in inner city. It matches.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. And anger is a result of sadness and fear left unattended, meaning left unprocessed. When sadness and fear become constricted, which has happened in this community a lot because of how the, closing and losing of jobs and all of those kinds of things, losing of people,
Yeah.
how many people we've lost,
Right.
right? So when those become constricted because it can't be processed, then it's not like they go away, they're just constricted.
Yeah.
So they combine to get our attention, and they manifest as loud weakness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I got flipped off probably 3 times yesterday driving. Right?
Well, I won't comment on your driving ability.
No, I'm a lousy driver, no doubt. That I'm a lousy driver. I'm an excellent city driver. I learned, it's funny because I learned to drive in New York City, and I was just recently there, and I could like boom, 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 and I was like, oh, no wonder I'm a lousy driver everywhere else. But having said that, right, people don't have to flip off,
Yeah,
right?
oh, yeah. No, I was just totally joking.
But yes, and you could see they were enjoying it because it was a release.
Right.
And I'm no stranger to enjoying that surge of losing my temper.
Right.
But it's a release of all that stuff that's stuck in there.
Right.
That needs to have.
Yeah. We need to find a different way to process it then.
Right. Well, right.
Just
and
releasing it in bursts of anger.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Or the flip side, not burst of anger, but depression, like a cluster so tangled that it's extreme depression. You can't get out of bed.
Right.
Those are
Right. Yep.
Okay.
Well, I know we're going to leave it on a cliffhanger there because I want to go into how to deal with all that, but I think that'll be good, material for us to save for the future.
Okay.
So everyone out there, you can let us know what you thought of this. We're at about a half hour. We'll try to keep it to maybe about a half hour, 20 to 30 minutes in length, and we're a little bit longer this time because we had all the background information. But once again, leave the things that you're dealing with. If you're dealing with anger, maybe give us a situation, give us something to go off of, give us a question, or depression, anxiety, addiction, family members in addiction. It's all on the table, right?
Yes, absolutely, all of it, because it applies to everything.
Yeah. So whatever situation you have going on, leave it in the comments, and we will use it for the next round, and we'll hopefully be able to keep this going for Mental Health Monday.
Yeah. Cool.
Loved it.
Me too.
Thank you so much, and we will see all of you next Monday morning.